Should you play Undertale? An indie game released for the PC in 2015 by Toby Fox, it imitates a 2D JRPG that is filled with comedy, tragedy, and prejudice. It has received high acclaim amongst critics and is deeply endeared by its fans. The question is its praise warranted? What are the factors that make it so? And should you play it? Story. The opening cutscene to the game gives the player a short backstory of the world. In ancient times, the Earth was ruled between humans and monsters. However, a war broke out and the victorious humans sealed the monster race underground with magic. It then jumps to modern day, where a small child is climbing a mountain when they trip over a root and fall into a great chasm. The player then assumes the role of the child, and the story is about your survival and finding a way out of the underground, hence the title of the game. You soon meet monsters which are both hostile and friendly, who the player chooses to either befriend or fight. This will in turn change how the other character will regard you in the game. Along the story, you learn more of the lore on human and monster souls, as well as the cause for the current state of events. Undertale on the surface has a very straightforward story. That being said, Undertale's strongest aspect is its characters. The kind of characters you will encounter in Undertale are quirky and eccentric, ranging from a spaghetti-cooking skeleton to a talk show celebrity robot. Each one has a quirk that can range from being overly egotistical, overly righteous, overly awkward, or overly fabulous. Each major character in the game will also have a fight in which the player can defeat or spare them. This choice helps create favoritism and a stronger emotional bond between the player and the characters. This is amplified as it is usually more complicated to save a character than kill them. While I personally wasn't particular on any one character, each one of them was entertaining and had some kind of motivation that helps drive the story. This helps give life to the world and a reason for the character to care about it. Undertale is also a game of parody, specifically towards the JRPG genre. Throughout the game, there are tropes that are reversed or parodized for humor or plot points. To give one example, each shop you come across in the game has a sell option. However, only one shop will actually buy your items, while the rest of them ridicule the player for suggesting such an unrealistic option. The characters' motivations in the story are also made to be purposely deceptive, with initially perceived good and bad characters having opposite intentions. The game reminds the player that prejudice is unreliable and only creates distortions in perception. This is the main theme found in Undertale, as well as appraising the value of relationships, especially when they are placed in a compromising position. The game also acts as contrarian as it dares to the JRPG model. A refreshing technique that I feel may have been a bit overused. For example, near the end of the game, they even apply this technique to your stats in a manner that is just cheeky. Undertale also has a direct influence from anime and otaku culture. There may be a few distracting moments, but overall, it's written into the world well. Most of the game's humor is reliant on the character's quirkiness, unexpected responses, and a plethora of meant-to-be-bad puns.
I know, I'll use my trusty frying pan as a drying pan.
Undertale's story has a backdrop of unjust tragedy filled with a quirky cast of characters and situations. Coupled with its parodical nature, your predictions of the game's experience will constantly be challenged. Gameplay. Undertale's gameplay is divided into exploration and battle. In exploration, the player moves in 4 directions, interacting with objects and characters, or encountering enemies. You can also manage your inventory, which can be filled with weapons, armor, health, and special items, as well as contact allies using a cell phone, an action usually resulting in comical skits of redundant information or incompetence. A nice aspect of Undertale here is its homage to old-school video game design, as the game is filled with hidden enemies, areas, items, and events that are transparent and completely dependent on the player's intuition. The game even references your arbitrary decisions. Once in battle, the player's actions are executed through a series of menu options, and attacks are done in quick-time style events. The enemy attacks are executed very differently. The box at the bottom of the screen contains a heart, which is your life force. The enemy then generates objects in the box, which try to touch your heart, which then cause damage. The player needs to evade these objects in order to survive. Each enemy has a different moveset that makes the player learn and adapt to the battle, with the bosses having the most distinct and difficult attack patterns. This helps create memorable battles and connections to characters as their attacks reflect their behavior. It's an innovative system that I best describe as a crossover of Final Fantasy and Touhou. Along with the fight option, the player can also select items, show mercy, and act. The act option is the most iconic mechanic of Undertale. This option allows the player to talk to the enemy, with each having a set of conditions that, if met, will be rendered docile. So basically, this is a game where you can talk your way out of fighting, and it's equally as effective. This adds a psychological layer to each encounter. I found myself excited by discovering how each enemy reacted to my actions and which ones defeated them. Most of the enemy personalities are based on archetypes, which encourages the player to try and exploit their quirks. I like this option because the game is ambiguous whether it should be used or not. There's nothing like a karma system, allowing the player liberty to use it at will and result in a legitimate ending. However, what the game doesn't tell you is that having a mix of kills and saves will lead to one of the game's neutral endings, while there are two distinct endings following an all-save or all-kill playthrough. I'd recommend doing at least one all-save playthrough to get a full appreciation of the game's story and characters, as it has the most developed ending. Undertale also remembers your choices from previous playthroughs, which is further ambiguous as completion of the game doesn't lead to a new game plus, but the player must manually use the reset feature on the main menu. My one gripe with this game, though, is that the environments are very bland. Once an area's puzzles are solved and bosses defeated, these areas become virtual dead zones of empty hallways with nothing to interact with. The only reason a player would backtrack through the game would be to interact with old characters. Even in areas containing enemies, the overall encounter rate is very low, which I infer was done in order to encourage players to attempt pacifist playthroughs. Presentation. Undertale uses its limitations to its advantage, with a bit-type sprite art style to create charmingly simple character designs, with significant characters receiving more detailed designs and charismatic dialogue. The decisions made in the game reflect more directly onto the player, as you assume the direct role of the protagonist, emphasized when you enter your name at the beginning of the game, and the fact that your character has about 2 definable traits. Also, because the battle interface is so simple, it leaves room for a lot of adaptability, which is taken advantage of throughout the game and especially during the final boss fight. It's a technique that was innovatively used to create a sense of epic scale by escalation from something simple. Undertale's other big accomplishment is its music. From the sadness of a forgotten world to the groovy vibe of a machine city, the music provides a much-needed emotional backdrop to its simplistic 2D environments. I would go as far to say that the music is a crucial part of Undertale's success, as it works in conjunction with characters and locations to add a real sense of tone and life to the game world. Conclusion. Undertale's success can be attributed to strong musical themes, charmingly simple aesthetics, and an emotionally focused storyline. And my final verdict is, it's alright. Despite the positive things that I've said about Undertale in this video, it still feels very average to me at the end of the day. This is because a lot of its content is parody or reference rather than original, and in the end that makes it feel lacking. It's not a bad game, but it's certainly not as amazing as the internet credits it to be. Undertale does use heavy appeals of emotion, so I feel it has received an abundance of subjective appraisal that may have been a little bit blown out of proportion. Undertale reminds me of an adventure book I would have read in middle school, one that's fun, simple, and quaint. So, should you play Undertale? If you find the character designs and music appealing, then there might be something here for you. Earthbound was also the inspiration for this game, so if you're looking for something similar, then I give this one a go. Thank you for watching.